Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Staffing versus Outsourcing, How to Make the Right Decision for Your Dealership. My name is Eliana Raggio, and I'll be your moderator today. And today's webinar is being presented by Dealeron. And for anyone who isn't familiar with Dealeron, well, we're an award-winning website development company and digital agency, best known for our search engine optimization, best-in-class customer service, and our award-winning websites. Dealeron was named the top-rated website provider by Driving Sales in 2012 and 2013, and Dealeron customers were winners of the Spring and Fall 2012 Digital Dealer Website Excellence Awards, including the highly coveted overall winner. Recently at NADA, Dealeron also received the Best in Show Award for Website Design from Dealer Marketing Magazine. Dealeron is so committed to lead conversion, optimization, and customer service that we're the only company in the industry to offer a money-back lead guarantee program. So, does your website company guarantee you leads? Well, then maybe you should check us out at Dealeron.com. And we have a great show in store for you today. We are so pleased to have Gary May as our presenter. Gary May launched interactive marketing and consulting services in 2007 with a focus on helping dealerships and OEMs with digital marketing, e-commerce, process, and branding. The company also added social media management and sales training in 2007. Focusing on best practices for marketing and lead management, Gary's passion for businesses in the automotive space coincides with his no-holds-barred approach to business management. Featured as a speaker at automotive events including Driving Sales, J.D. Power & Associates, and PCG, a regular blogger and recognized dealer advocate, he and his company focus their strengths and attention on making progressive dealerships unique in a time where there are more constraints being enforced, limiting franchises. Gary is an avid traveler and cyclist, and he can be reached at gary@imaxweb.com. Now, during the presentation, if you have any questions, please use the question feature located on the corner of your screen to submit them. At the end of the presentation, we'll answer those questions of general interest. If we're unable to get to your question live, don't worry, we're going to respond by email to you later today. Also, don't forget, a link to download a copy of the webinar recording is also going to be emailed to you later today for your reference, and hey, feel free to share it with friends and colleagues. Also, I wanted to let you know that Dealeron is going to be at the upcoming AutoCon convention, September 4th, 5th, and 6th. That's just next week. It's going to be at the Aria Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, baby. We're going to be at booth 304. So if you're going to be there, you got to stop by and say hi. I'm going to be there. It's going to be a great convention. And for more information, go to autocon2013.com. And hey, while you're there, you got to check out the speaking session with the CEO of Dealeron, Ali Amirazvani. He's going to be talking about advanced SEO. And let me tell you, he packs the room every time he presents. Standing room only, definitely worth the view. You definitely don't want to miss that. And guess what? Our good friends at Interactive Marketing and Consulting Services are giving one lucky attendee today a great prize for their dealership. A comprehensive contact assessment and 1-hour training with Gary May himself. It's valued at $750, but you have to be on the live broadcast to win it, so stay tuned for more details at the end of the presentation. Also, at the conclusion of this webinar, you're going to receive a short survey, so fill it out because we're always looking for great feedback from our audience. Today we're going to randomly select a couple of people from all the completed surveys to also win some Google prizes. So let's get started. Let's learn staffing versus outsourcing. How to make the right decision for your dealership. Gary May, so glad that you're back on the show today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Eliana, and thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Oh, are you kidding? The pleasure is all mine. And I have to say, the people that have been talking about this webinar topic, this is a hot topic. A lot of people are having problems with deciding whether staffing versus outsourcing is the right decision for them. And some things they really feel positively that they must staff, and other ones they feel very strongly they must outsource. But is it really, are they making the right decision, or is it causing them more headaches or more time or more money than it's worth? So that's what we're here to talk about today, right, Gary?
Exactly, and just as you indicated, that there's a lot of buzz about this just as a webinar subject. What spurred this off and what you and I talked about before was we've really seen an increase, and I've heard about it from other people in the field, but definitely ourselves, IMAX has been getting a lot of calls for about 4 to 5 months, even if it's a non-client saying, is this something that we should outsource? Or, hey, we really respect your decisions on this and your advice. What should we do? Here's what we want to get done, and this is what we heard at a meeting, or this is what we heard at a 20 group. So a lot of times there's a lot of mystery still involved with it, or a lot of misinformation. So let's dispel that today together.
I love it. What are we going to be learning about today?
So we're going to learn how to clearly define the need, and that's going to be a dealership activity. Then, cooperatively, how do you identify either the staff and resource situation or deciding which companies best suit you? Again, this is not a vendor endorsement presentation, but we are going to talk about how you make that decision. Then we're going to talk about how you track and monetize either way you go, or if you do it joint. One of the things we'll be talking about today is how to do it cohesively, and then ultimately we're going to get into what Eliana talked about at the end, the Q&A session, which is my favorite part, because at the end of the day, I like my sessions to be interactive, so hopefully the questions that Eliana gets over on the side in the GoToMeeting packet on the side will be filling up as the presentation goes on. So yeah, that's what we're going to leave here today with for all the dealers in attendance. Eliana?
That sounds great. And audience, in your chat feature, I forwarded a bit.ly link that will take you to the Dealer on Google Plus page, where we have posted a question for you today. And we want to know what you think. So the question that we have posted on the Dealer on Google Plus page is, what are you currently doing at your dealership, cost and or structure-wise, that you would have never thought of doing 2 or even 3 years ago? Whatever the answer is, we want to know. We're going to collect those answers and give some shout-outs to some people later on after Gary's presentation and read some of the best answers. So hopefully you'll get involved and go to the Google Plus page and let us know what you think. Gary?
Well, thank you. So let's kick it off. There's a perceived perception, and it runs deep, about this bar between your dealership team and the vendor team. And really, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is bridging that gap. It used to be, and still is today, but there used to be a heavy perception about whether or not the dealership could actually exercise a task, no matter what it was. And in the digital vein, we have to realize that there's so many things that a dealership should do today. 40 years ago was, hey, we're here to sell cars. In 2013, you walk into a dealership, hey, you should be doing this is a neat new feature. What do you hear? Hey, we're here to sell cars. The big difference is it used to be about the manufacturer driving traffic based on the car, the model, the launch, the redesign, the sexy commercial. Now, because the consumer controls everything that they do, from search to engagement to purchase decisions, we need to be able to live in an environment where there's much more cooperation. Now, I'm not trying to say that there's not. However, the gap still exists largely based on perception. The dealership team and vendor team can actually be one as long as you strike the proper balance, have the right assessment, and get the right vendor partner. At the end of the day, pretty much any of the vendors out there in the market are going to do what they say they're going to do. The vetting out process for digital has been happening over the last decade. And so most of the time you're going to get somebody that's very reliable. Of course, startups, you want to question them, you want to check them out. But anybody who's established, you can trust them. You have to figure out what that balance is. So this can meld, let alone many people are leaving the dealership today to become vendors, and vice versa. People from the vendor side are going into dealerships. That's even happening on the OEM side. So let's dive into this. As Eliana put up in the webinar announcement, we're breaking this down into some very specific categories, and we're going to start with website, and that's on-page optimization. This is not counting off-site, which, for those of you who do not know, the percentage of influence your search results happen or have, and how much influence you get, has less to do with your website and more to do with what happens off your website. But for starters, we're going to focus on on-page optimization. So this is absolutely essential. Most dealerships until about 2007, 2008 relied entirely on their manufacturers, with rare exception. Most of that still happens, especially if you have a mandated OEM website. That vendor is fed incentives, specials, announcements, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 integrated marketing pieces, video, photos. They also watch your compliance. They look at your inventory feed, see what kind of vehicles, non-branded, used vehicles that you are featuring, that you're selling. Everybody on the call is going to basically know to some degree or other that the OEM feeds that stuff. And if you do maintain an aftermarket site like DealerOn, not only can you get the feeds to go in, but you do control the rest of the content. So it's very important to realize that you need to be doing this regularly. If you're not doing it right now, before you do anything else talked about in this webinar and decide which way you want to go, start creating your own content. In 2013, if you're not creating your own content, not inventory or specials related, these are adding pages to your websites that are non-automated. This is future vehicles, things that are non-embargoed information, launch, design, Pebble Beach Concourse just passed. So if they had a historical photo, the new model and the old model, things like that. Side-by-side comparisons, taking editorial comparisons as long as you give attribution, etc. So you need to be looking at this content. There should be nothing static, not counting inventory, on your site monthly. Nothing should remain static except for basically your About Us page, your About Service page, your About Parts page, maybe your dealership history. Everything else should be fluid, should be dynamic. One of the things that is talked a lot about today is video. Video optimization is critical. If you do carry video on your website, make sure for the most part that you're using both proprietary and embedded videos. Some of the proprietary video players out there are not read by the search engines. Some of them can see that there's a video window, but they can't see the rest of the content. So everything that you're going to be doing has to align itself with how the search engines find content. It does need to be crawlable. That means it needs to be text or HTML that's read. So if you or a vendor adds pages to your website, they need to be using dynamic content that's manually fed to the website. We'll get into this a little bit more into social media in a few minutes, but it needs to be on page. The preference is for non-redundant content, and you're hearing that more and more. Matter of fact, Celiana talked about AutoCon coming up in Ollie's session. You may have noticed it talked about Penguin and Panda updates. Bing, Google, Yahoo, all the search engines are going more towards consumer-controlled content, consumer-controlled engagement, etc. It has to do with what you're providing and how consumers actually, how much they consume it, how much they read it, how much they share it. So again, if you're actually supporting two sites, make sure that you not only have the OEM content, but that you really focus on your own. This takes the least amount of research. You know what models are coming out. You know what's happening in the community. You know where your happy customers are. Do you have photos and videos of them? That stuff does not need to live only on your review sites. It is absolutely critical to put as much viable content as you possibly can on your website. And so if it's that your new model won an award at the Detroit Auto Show or the Frankfurt Auto Show or something like that, any type of content that feeds your brand, your local community, or the dealership name, the dealership brand is critical. On average, going into hundreds of dealerships on a yearly basis all over the U.S. and Canada, talking about cost, engaging them in different environments around structure, staffing, and outsourcing. The average dealer, this is not the most progressive, the ones who are doing the most amount of content. The average, they're spending about 5 to 10 hours per month if they're doing it in-house. We do recommend more, but that's about the average. And again, you do have to have required content and knowledge about how to administer, post, optimize, and otherwise make sure the content's getting read. yes, you can, once you create content, you can always punt it over to your vendor and say, hey, add this page for us. Here's the text or here's the photos. But if you have the ability to do it yourself and have that knowledge of the back end, do it. Some website vendors do not allow content administration at all. You have to push everything over to them, to their customer service department. But no matter what, do that. On average, we see costs that don't exceed about $250 a month, and the little bracket note here covers reallocation of assets. Somebody that's doing marketing while they're creating an ad could also spin that off and make a page. Too many times, resources are very siloed. If you have siloed resources in-house and out-of-house, let's say you do have an ad agency, but you don't have anybody adding content, you just say, you know what, these articles that we're having you push into ads or into newspaper or creating direct mail piece of it, if they have to do with our dealership, and again, adding content, update, new service department, etc., have them also make a text version of everything they do and push it over to your website company, or do it in-house. Outsourcing it, although the content is usually much more significant, much more consistent, yes, there is going to be some redundancy, brand-based redundancy, but this is where the biggest gap is between outsourcing completely and having it in-house. So the cost gap here is anywhere from about $450 up to $750 a month, a drop in the hat for most dealerships. I'm not trying to take up a different conversation here, but recognizing that those are not significant efforts. And this is going to cover a per rooftop or per brand environment. If you have 20 stores, yes, you will have economies of scale. This is based on a per dealership, or if you do have a Jaguar Land Rover, for example, if you have 2 brands under one rooftop, if you're a Ford and Mazda dealership, you'll have some economies of scale. But this is based on a single dealership. Let's hit the in-house and outsource differences. Biggest thing is you're going to control the resources. You're going to stay up on what's happening. This is going to be from what you have available to you. Webinars like Dealer On, blogs like Driving Sales and Dealer Refresh. The places that show you best practices, hey, this is how to get this done. They're out there, they're readily available. When dealerships miss those marks, it's relatively frustrating because this information's out there, and you can go outside the industry for this information. This is how to best set up a blog. This is how to best set up page content. The resources are out there. Stay up to date on them, and you can control your digital domain. You can track it easily. Every time you add a page to your website, the analytics code is automatically added to that page because the analytics code automates through your website as long as you have Google Analytics embedded in your site. And you can track how many hits, how many conversions, if you have a form on it. You can track everything to do with the content you're adding. There are also ways through Google and other tools that you can measure and ensure the pages you're adding are getting crawled. It's critical. We'll go over the tools in mass at the end, but you can use Google Alerts. You can use Google Webmaster Tools as 2 here, even just Google. This is, even today, there's a lot of dealers that are not utilizing this resource. You can go to google.com and then type into the search bar site : and your website domain, and it will show you how many pages it has found. Keep track of it, screenshot it, or write it down, and then track each month or every other week if you're adding a lot of content, how many pages are being found. The timing of posts you can control. Sometimes it's not as controllable with outsourcing it, and yes, you do have a lower cost. When you go with an outside vendor, your website company, third-party company, they are dedicated to putting people and resources against keeping up to date. Context, search engines, etc. They're required to do that essentially in order to be an effective vendor, an effective provider, so they tend to be a little more progressive on what to do. They do have dedicated resources. They will have a person who's going to be your content person, or 2 people, doesn't change. You can count on regular delivery once you sign up for a package or a specific dollar amount. And then this is the only thing. I do like integrated reporting. It's fundamentally good to have a quote-unquote dashboard. However, I do question sometimes how reliable they are. But again, there are ways to measure it yourself if you are outsourcing it. You do have a fixed cost and you do have flexibility where you may not have the complete flexibility you need inside the dealership environment. They are always on. The one risk, and anybody who's done this in the last 10 years themselves has also found this: non-compliant imagery, non-compliant video, incorrect logos, embargoed information that makes it out, or incorrect information from the sources that your third party uses. So do be cognizant that is the risk of not doing it in-house, but then again, you could also make the mistake in-house. That's where the dings come from your OEMs, because they're monitoring your websites. So big benefit here either way is content flow, making sure that there's enough of it and making sure that it is getting crawled. This is a very critical element going forward, but it is going to be less and less of a player as other aspects, including social media, take over. So let's talk about social media. Let's face it, social is absolutely essential to search. It's essential to authority and SEO ranking. Do not dismiss it. It is still astonishing today that people are asking questions that are so basic. Yes, we understand completely if somebody doesn't choose to be in social media themselves, the dealer, dealer principal, management, etc. But you can't exist today without being able to talk with your clients. Social media, unlike websites, is two-way communication. Websites are one-way communication. So it is absolutely and utterly underrated. Operating it properly is essential, and you want to create conversation. You have to create engagement. Most of the social media measuring and SEO measuring tools show you engagement over everything else now. And there's nothing else today that's more important. Mix up your content. You're in the store. You're there. You know what's happening in your community. Even if your vendor's in the same town that administers something to do with your content for your websites, they can feed you things that are happening. You need to absolutely keep your content going all the time. You have to answer and engage on all questions or responses to posts. If somebody answers a question you pose, or they ask a question of you, you have to be there. If they're posting a review and it's negative, you have to be there. If it's positive, you should be there. Blogs are great engagement platforms as long as they're optimized properly. Make sure that you're asking the right questions and engaging on blogs. Search engines do like blogs as long as, again, they are set up and maintained properly. Use paid and free software for listening, social media, and reputation management. The one great thing about monitoring and engaging through content, no matter where it is listening software has become so inexpensive that almost any dealership could do it. Every dealership should do it, but many still rely on vendors to do that. You can get software in the $100 to $500 range a month. Do your own reporting out of it, do your own tracking, and that's going to give you the same level of service that you get from most of your third parties. And again, social has an SEO lift. As a matter of fact, there are social media companies that do push the premise of SEO. They may not say SEO. It could be, hey, we give you 50, 75, 100 sites when you sign up for our social media. Be acutely aware that social media companies need to be vetted out and evaluated properly. There are endorsements out there that may not be viable for you. Yes, they have an endorsement. Yes, you get all of it or part of it co-paid. But the bottom line is social media can also hurt you if not done right. Recently, very recently, some of you may be aware of a SEO study that Brian Pash from PCG did in regard to overall SEO evaluations for a number of dealers in the study. And just a couple days ago, it came out that a BMW dealership had signed up for a social media service, excuse me, that was improperly using blogs and content into their blogs on the surface for SEO that were not properly set up and could actually damage, in this case, are damaging, but absolutely can damage what happens to you in search results and the relevancy of all your content. If you start getting downgraded, that slide gets very precipitous and you can definitely end up at the bottom of the search heap when it comes to relevancy. Don't do that. Are you in a position of necessarily knowing all the ins and outs of the content in social media? That may not be the case, but asking in third party, I almost said unbiased, but it's very hard to evaluate that, but go away from the vendors when you're considering them. Ask dealers in your community, in yours. Too many times 20 groups will pull information from somebody 2,000 miles away, and it may be relevant, but too many times it ends up being a vendor decision that was not the wisest choice for the dealership to make. Now, pointing this out because when you decide whether to do in-house or sub it out, the results can absolutely positively be the same. There are employees that have devastated dealerships in social media. So it's very important to realize that, especially with social taking the footprint that it does today, you need to absolutely know not just that they're posting regularly and that you get a nice shiny report, you know exactly what's happening to you. And in that case, again, of the PCG study, what they had signed up for and the way that the blogs were set up was absolutely incorrect. And again, hopefully the dealership goes away from the vendor, but at the end of the day, the dealership needs to know as you go through these steps of evaluating which way to go, not scaring you away from outsourcing social media, but just know what the company does and evaluate it. Look at it. Get a month of social media posts from that company if they're engaged with you, and then look at any other dealership. Recently, J.D. Rucker had a post that was about, does your dealership allow hand-me-downs? And one social media company had posted the same exact post of the same exact photo on hundreds of sites at the same time, the same day. That's not going to help you, and it's not going to create engagement. Yes, people do not like 20 different dealerships in the same brand, so they're themselves not going to see it. But there's a chance it will be seen when they're evaluating dealerships for purchase, number one, and number two, the search engines can see what happens. With some exception, a lot of Facebook content does get blocked, but the blogs aren't, Twitter's not, other social media platforms are not. So be very cognizant of it. Pay to play. We now live in an environment where free social media, fundamental free, meaning you don't pay for the platform, is gone. It's actually been gone for a little while. You are going to pay to play, meaning to be there, not to buy fake fans and do other things that you absolutely positively should not. Dealerships are still buying fans, and it will absolutely destroy you. Again, do not get into environments where things are fake. Get used to paying and enjoy it. You can boost your Facebook posts. You can promote tweets. You can get a blog post that gets syndicated. As long as it's unique content, it's your content, go for it. That's what creates conversation, and all the platforms, even LinkedIn, if you have your company profile on LinkedIn and you recruit through LinkedIn, the platforms are going away from free. They have to monetize. Even if they're not public, they have to monetize. Your vendors should know how to operate in these environments. Trust that they do, but the best suggestion I could ever make for social media is do it together. We absolutely do that. There's no dealer we ever post for independently. You absolutely, and unilaterally, you absolutely must create a partnership, because even if you are paying to outsource, which is great, you need to monitor it, and also, just as importantly, you need to make sure that your unique content is getting up there. If you're not sending pictures of 10 customers still buying cars at midnight happily, or show video of a walk around of a vehicle that you're first in your AOI or your DMA, you're the first dealer to get that car landed, you want to get your video up first, push it onto Facebook, push it through Twitter, put it onto your blog. Okay, that stuff is absolutely critical to make sure you do feed, if you are outsourcing, that you're feeding your vendor. So on average, we're talking about 2 to 2.5 hours a day to do this for a single point in-house. And again, same requirements. It's not just posting. You need to be able to watch analytics and make sure, excuse me, jumped ahead there, and make sure that you are administering, tracking, and measuring every single thing you do. On average, we're seeing costs of about $750 to $900 a month to correctly do social media in-house. Outsourcing it, it's incrementally more. But again, the balance that you have with that is you get to dedicate your attention to just what you want to focus on. So we're seeing slightly higher costs. Yes, there are some vendors who put some pretty astronomical prices onto social media. Be wary of it, but it doesn't mean that they're not doing everything they say that they're going to do for you. In-house and outsource. Let's look at the pros and cons. Big ones for doing it in-house, or at least somewhat cooperatively with the majority in-house. You're completely controlling your content, your resources, your equipment, your video, your photos, etc. You get to post it in a much timelier way. You don't have to send it out to get posted. Okay, you get to stay up again with the resources available. Stay up on the content and social media rules. It's critical. You can get some big upside from that. You can track everything. The only platform, and it's coming, that doesn't have its own backend analytics is Twitter. It is coming. There are third-party sites like Twitlizer, Follower Wonk that allow you to do that. You won't be posting redundant content. Okay? Again, the listening software, the auditing software is very inexpensive nowadays, and the overall cost here. Again, the one thing I'd like to point out, the cost difference between doing social in-house and properly outsourcing it is nominal. Okay? Outsourcing it. Again, you have resources that are dedicated to staying up on it. There are companies launching social media services all the time. Again, evaluate, but their job is to stay up on it. You do get dedicated resources. They do have better scale than you do. So that is one advantage to outsourcing. They can typically produce more content at a lower price if you look at it per post and per engagement than you can do yourself. They do, with the scale that they have, the vendors can evaluate things real time and bring it over from either other clients or other areas where they're seeing success or a new way of posting that they find. They can carry that through a lot faster. Most of the time, you need to hear about it before you can leverage that benefit. Enterprise reporting, again, I always question reliability of dashboards, but there are better and better enterprise reporting platforms all the time. They're more available, and again, the vendors have more flexibility. This is a big one, again, to the example of the PCG SEO study. Black hat or anything less than best practice will absolutely positively damage you. There is no question about it anymore. Yes, people are selling cars through social media. They're selling service through social media. They're retaining their customers through social media, and a couple of the wrong moves can absolutely devastate you. We're not going to get into the specifics on platform, but you've probably heard about how Facebook Edge rank does change based on engagement. If you are not using the right vendor or using some of the wrong practices yourself, it could actually be damaging. So we're going to fly over now to SEO. This is off-site for the majority of it, off-site SEO, and this is critical. And being as how it's talked about a lot, I'm going to go faster right into the side-by-side comparison. If you're not aware of the SEO benefit today, it's more critical than ever, especially with Google's latest update, Penguin 2.0. Bottom line is you need to be posting content off-site constantly. And again, a lot of this stuff could be fed over to you. You do blog teasers, bring it over to your blog and show the full article there. You only show a snippet through links or through syndication, press releases. It's interesting, there seems to be this big thing about, oh, press releases just don't work anymore. They absolutely positively do, but they have to be done right. And again, there's fewer free sources out there, there's more paid, and that's absolutely okay because, again, you get to post, measure, and quantify what you're doing. So For most of the dealers across the country that we're seeing, we're looking at about $500 to $1,200 a month if it's a shared asset. Again, marketing department, internet person that also does content, again, non-lead managing, and dedicated resources about $2,000 to $2,500 a month. We've spent the most amount of time evaluating this over the last year for our own internal purposes. Outsourcing it, you do, again, have the benefit of any hours versus dedicated hours to doing it, where research takes the most amount of time. We're seeing average costs of about $1,000 a month to over $3,000. If you want to dominate, it takes content, and it takes the right content. So we're seeing a SEO bridge because of how much time it's taking, and where this was a massive disparity a couple years ago, dealerships are doing this very effectively in-house. You got to look at targeting and making sure that your content is absolutely positively yours. Doesn't matter if it's copied later, you're the original source, and the search engines can recognize that. Be first to market always. Do not rely on your manufacturer, ever. You get timelier access to your assets. We find that most vendors are still waiting for assets by the time that you have it from your OEM's media library. Again, you want to make sure you're compliant, so watch embargo dates, but this is an easy one. We've found a lot of vendors, and this is not the website company's fault, but most of the time they're waiting to get photos of the next model that came out at the auto show 2 months ago and it's still not in their media library. Go straight to your manufacturer, send it over to the vendor. But again, doing it yourself, you do create a one-on-one relationship with your website vendor, and if you're a squeaky wheel and are producing a lot of content, there's huge lift for you. Your tracking and everything is right there. It's better. And again, you do have a lower cost. It is variable, but it's that disparity between outsourcing and taking it in-house is shrinking, and it's shrinking rapidly. Outsource way, the greatest advantage I could say, other than always on, is better access to analytics at lower cost or no additional cost because of scale. Pixel tracking, heat maps, integration with retargeting, especially if they know the vendor or if they're managing retargeting in Facebook advertising, for example, in-house for you, plus the content. It really makes a big difference when you're pushing out content. Again, you want non-redundant content. Make sure you stay on them. And also for the non-compliant assets. We've seen that a lot. Some of the brands, I'm not going to single them out, are tougher than others. You get a few dings and suddenly you lose all your holdback or you lose allocation. It's getting that way more and more. Again, SEO is relatively understood, I'd say probably by this whole audience because of who Dealer On usually gets into the webinars, but do know that this is something that can be done in-house or cooperatively, as well as outsourcing. We're finding that more dealers are willing to staff for it. But the big cost benefit that existed a couple years ago is basically dissipated. So, last feature on the pure content side is inventory. I don't think there's any question today that properly photographing, marketing, and uploading and syndicating your inventory is critical. There's still a lot of questions about, hey, should I bring this in-house? Our own photographer, our own studio. No question, I wish every dealership went that way. Sorry, all the photography vendors. It's just not going to happen. So if you do decide to take it in-house, the critical parts are making sure your assets rock and that you are marketing your cars, meaning the puff statement, the marketing statement that gets picked up by the search engines. You want to make sure your first 60 characters, this is the same thing for video, but you want to make sure your first 60 characters in the marketing line, you're not choosing the cheese from your inventory vendor. You're writing it. It's unique to your car, okay? But the bigger element here about bringing it in-house is cost, effectiveness. What you need to do is make sure you got the right place, whether it's a studio or just a place on the lot, that you have a shot list that's consistent, that you manage yourself, that the photography is high quality. Yes, it all gets pushed down to the same size for the web basically, but you can reuse those assets. If you do capture video, whether or not you actually produce it and put it up on every car, you have video to ultimately start feeding to the search engines, which is great. You do want to make sure that you're hitting, if you do bring in a house, that you are hitting all of the vendors, all the syndication listing sites, marketing sites, that you're hitting their photo count, optimized photo count. They'll tell you how many photos are being hit per car. Make sure you're never, ever, ever under that. And if you are using entirely an outsourced vendor for it, make sure that they're doing it reliably and that they're sticking to a shot list. I've got dealerships that say, oh yeah, we got it down. They're here reliably. They're here 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Some of our larger clients, 10 plus stores in the group, they're here every day. They're dedicated to us. They still make mistakes. Audit your content. Yes, a lot of the inventory backends will show you that, you know, what your completion rate is of photos. It's just so essential. So side-by-side comparison. This is all predicated on inventory. But every dealership that we've ever watched take it over and do it in-house has never, that we've worked with, has never reverted back to using the third parties, ever. So what we see on average is a little higher per entry level, 14 to 17 on average for outsourcing, 10 to 14 for in-house, but these are the ranges that we're seeing, and you've got to know all the back ends. And again, do not just turn on cheese for marketing your cars. Some dealers have told us, hey, we went to a seminar at a conference, and they said, hey, there's seven words that Google picks up every time on cars. So we have to put those 7 words in there, and nothing else matters. No such thing. And Google and Bing keep changing the target. Look at doing everything you can to make sure your car is consumer friendly. Okay, and that's as many unique features about that car as soon as possible. When you do it in-house, you've got control over all of the main elements. You can deliver faster usually to market, especially when you're using a vendor, website vendor inventory company's camera that feeds immediately and appends to vendor stock numbers. Huge advantage. You own your own equipment, which is also great to use for other imagery and other video assets. Day-to-day is a big advantage compared to when are they coming in. Yes, it's a bit of a task when you start taking over in-house or when you hire a new company because they have to shoot a lot more assets, but when you get to the point that you're only shooting what you take in on trade for your used car or the new cars that land off the truck, you get into your rhythm. It's, in my opinion, it's a better way to go. The outsourced side has some significant advantages. Most of them are willing to push fixed costs. They do have better troubleshooting with the large portals where your inventory does end up. They get higher SLA level resources and dedicated assets to fix issues. So if you're a single point shooting your own car and, you know, a large company that does your inventory, you both have the issue, whose call are they going to take if we try to resolve it first? So there are some advantages to outsourcing. The biggest risk is putting the wrong pricing on the cars. We see this consistently with outside vendors. And again, non-compliant information or data, and then corrupt files on transfer because they're using a wireless card out on the lot shooting the cars, and it's 120 degrees out right now. So, hey, Eliana, do we have a poll question?
Yes, we do. Okay, audience, we have a poll question for you. So if you could please look at your screen and vote on this question. Are you currently spending more resources and or costs in-house versus outsourcing? So are you spending more in-house or are you spending more outsourcing? So please select one of these following answers. Yes, we hire them as needed. Yes, we have invested more in software or automation. Well, it depends upon available resource technology and knowledge. No, we've invested more in outsourcing, or no, we just outsource everything. Whatever the answer is, we want to know. So get your vote in and let it be heard. And once I get a majority of the votes in, I'll close the poll and share the results with you, and then we'll really find out what's going on out there in your dealership. So, are you currently spending more resources and or costs in-house or outsourced? We want to know. Okay, votes are coming in. They're coming in steadily. We like that. We like that. And I don't want to tip the scales or anything, but Gary, What do you think most dealers are doing right now?
Across the board, and I'll go primarily non-clients, across the board we're starting to see more of more outsourced spend based on not being able to do something versus the perspective of doing it very progressively. But we are seeing overall more outsourcing. Probably about 20 to 30% of the time we're seeing dealers wanting to own everything and doing it in-house and hiring the staff. We've had 2 former clients bring everything, including website creation, bring everything in-house. So it's a very interesting question. That's why we wanted to know what the audience thought.
Right, and just so you know, our friend Kelly wrote in and she said, where is the "we don't spend money if we really don't have to" option? Yeah, we forgot to put that one on there, Kelly. Just pick the best one if you wouldn't mind.
Awesome. All right, so let's move on as the answers keep coming in. We've only got a couple more slides.
Okay, let's share the answers then.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, we're going to do this right now. We don't wait on anything here. So, okay, let's see. It says 50% of today's audience said, yes, we've invested more in software or automation. A solid third of today's audience says it depends upon available resources, technology, and knowledge. And only 17% said, yes, we hire as needed. But no one is doing more outsourcing than in-housing. Is that a word, in-housing?
In-housing. There you go. That's acceptable.
No one has selected that they've invested more in outsourcing or that they outsource anything, or everything, I should say. So,
you know what that means? That the dealer on attendee is a savvier. Oh,
well, I could have told you that. I got smart people coming to my show. Thank you, everyone, for chiming in and voting. We really appreciate it, and I'm going to turn it back over to Gary now.
Wonderful. So now we're going to get, for these last couple slides, we're going to get into the management side. And this will hopefully speak to any dealers or general managers we've got on the line. The biggest component is going to come down to vendor management and accountability. So the biggest thing, especially when we see vendor switches or taking it from outsource to in-house because you're hiring the headcount yourself and taking on that cost yourself, which is great. Everything needs to be benchmarked and spelled out. What will typically happen is a knee-jerk reaction, even if it's the right one, and things are not measured at the time that the change happened. So make sure that everything is screenshot, reports are saved, cost versus results are recorded. Doesn't matter if it's CRM, which is, all the CRMs in the market, the progressive ones at least, have great reporting tools. They can show you nearly any metric. However, we're still seeing dealers today that don't call up their vendor and say, I want this report, if they just don't see it in the turnkey reports in the CRM. But absolutely, from a capability standpoint, hold your vendor or your staff accountable to all metrics. That's one thing that we see slip, or within 60, 90, 120 days when the focus goes off that vendor specifically or off that process specifically. And then ongoing, hold yourselves accountable, whether it's in-house or outsource, to do reviews, not just a report, get a report, tossed at you or sent via email. Definitely look at monthly reports, or if it's something that doesn't need it as much monthly for you, go at least quarterly. Never go less than that. Most dealerships need monthly to watch, not just for the investment, but the deliverables, to make sure that they're getting it from their staff or from the vendor or from that joint partnership. The big miss is absolutely hiring outside and then ignoring it. The big thing that you do need to do is let them know why there's a change. Staff, vendor. One of the biggest things that we bring up to our clients specifically is, are you talking about this in your sales meetings? Well, no, this is not as important. Yes, it is. No, we talk about ops, service department, performance against the previous month. We talk about CSI. No, you need to talk about everything happening in your digital presence as it applies to staff or outsource. You don't have to go over every detail, but make sure that you're covering it. Operationally, vendor management, when you do outsource, is absolutely critical. It's not the cost, it's the accountability, and it's the deliverables. I can't see that. I can't say that, really as much as, oops, accidentally bumped ahead. There we go. I can't emphasize enough how important that is. So, real quick, in conclusion, then we go into our favorite Q&A time. You need to start looking at your real cost versus production. Again, it's no longer cost and budget, again, outsource versus in-house. You have to look at what the deliverables are and what the results are. And especially when it goes to the subjects, talking about the subjects we covered in today's webinar, it takes 4 to 6 months of consistent work before you can actually make a judgment. If you make a knee-jerk reaction within 30, 60 days, you've given no time to make sure that that category has legs and you can start evaluating it. Management engagement. I'm going to assume at least half the people in the webinar, and I don't know this, and Eliana keeps everybody's identity secret. But if there's at least half the people listening are the doers, the internet departments, the marketing people, the GSMs, not the dealers, not the GMs. Make sure that management is keeping this in front of everybody in the dealership all the time, and your job is to keep it in front of them. And then process improvement. Are you regularly holding assessment and accountability meetings with the vendor, and if you're in-house, not just with the people doing it, but with the whole team? You cannot do fractional management when it comes to your website, your SEO, your social media, and your on-site optimization anymore. And in closing, many, if not most parts of your business requires some engagement with an outside vendor, be it a vendor, a consultant, a third party. Don't harm your business's relationships, your production, your cost structure, or your ROI based on incomplete data or an evaluation on deliverables, not just cost. If you measure off cost alone, I'll say it again, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. Never say that costs too much because you don't know what you're missing. So again, Eliana, thank you very much. I hope this was impactful. This has been a big buzz for the last 4 or 5 months, and hopefully everybody got a lot out of it.
Thank you so much, Gary. Yeah, we have a few things to cover in the next few minutes, so we're going to try and go as quickly as possible. And audience, if you haven't gotten in your questions, I know Gary was very, very thorough, but if you have additional questions for Gary, now's a great time to send those in. We're going to be collecting those and getting to those in just a minute. But it's that time, if you missed it at the beginning of the webinar, well, I announced that our good friends at Interactive Marketing and Consulting Services, they're offering up a prize for one of you lucky attendees. So what is it? It's a comprehensive contact assessment and 1-hour training session with Gary May. It's valued at $750. And all you have to do is answer a simple question about today's presentation. The first one to write in the correct response wins this awesome prize. So get to your keyboards. Get ready. Here we go. Good luck, everyone. Usually the fastest typer wins. I think you know that. Here we go. Good luck. The question is, and by the way, I already told Gary I thought this was a very hard question. So we're going to see if any of you can get this right. On average, what is the price difference between in-house social media and properly outsourcing it? On average, what is the price difference between in-house social media and properly outsourcing it? Well, we've gotten a few answers in, and surprisingly, well, I should say not surprisingly, Gary, no one got the right answer yet.
Wanted to be tricky.
I know, you totally tripped them up.
Who was listening?
I don't think I think this is very unfair. So Gary, I'm going to just try and ask you if they, oh my gosh, we have somebody who gave the right answer. I can't believe it.
Somebody was paying attention.
Somebody was paying attention. I can't believe it. Kelly Wilson. Kelly Wilson had the correct answer. It is negligible. And she put it in quotes too.
Very good.
Kelly Wilson, you are hysterical, and I heart you for that. Thank you, everyone, for playing. We do very much appreciate it. Congratulations, Kelly Wilson. And let me see, Kelly Wilson, she's from Oliver C. Joseph Chrysler Dodge Jeep. So we want to say congratulations to her. And of course, we also want to thank Interactive Marketing and Consulting Services for their generosity. So thank you so much for that. Let me write this down. Kelly Wilson. Okay, I also want to let you know that Kelly also answered our Google Plus question. So if you missed it, we were asking people to go to Google Plus. We supplied a bit.ly link, and the question was, what are you currently doing at your dealership, cost and or structure-wise, that you would have never thought of doing 2 or 3 years ago? And Kelly had a great answer. She wrote in, we've gone from one person doing everything to having an internet director with 3 to 5 BDC CSRs, a large cost and structure change over the last 6 months. They are even starting to learn about content creation. Wow, that is huge. So Kelly,
That's awesome.
Big props to you and the good people over at Oliver C. Joseph CDJ. And also want to give a shout out to David Sharp. He's with Elliott Auto Group. He says they've been doing video email responses, which is great because, Gary, just a couple weeks ago, we had Robert Wiseman and Elise Kephart singing, of course, the praises about video email responses and how easy it is and how effective they are and that you should definitely be doing it. So, David, I hope you took that to heart, and it looks like you have, so thank you so much. And let's get started with some questions from the audience. David wrote in, I found that vendors' cameras are not nearly as high quality as what we use in-house, and the vendors do charge significantly more for their subpar cameras. Now, Gary, did you recommend that people go in-house or out-of-house with their video cameras?
So my response specifically to that is I wish every dealership in the country would, and then I made the little comment that now every inventory company is not going to like me, but the bottom line is everybody should take it in-house if it's viable from both a cost and production standpoint. And to, again, David, his name's David?
Yes.
To David's point, yes, and that's one of the bullets that was on the side-by-side comparison for inventory. You're typically going to maintain a higher quality camera, a higher quality production by doing it yourself, absolutely, and you can keep up with the technology faster.
Now, are you talking about just like walk-arounds, or you think you could use that video for everything like video responses too, video email responses?
You can use it for everything, and that's the benefit, but for still cameras and for video cameras, there is an advantage of having your own equipment and doing your photography as well as video. Again, even if you don't produce and deliver every video on each car, of course you have to have the pictures, but the camera can also be used for customer testimonials or any other, including the video responses like Eliana just brought up. There was the webinar recently on. Absolutely. So owning the equipment and buying really good software to produce all of it is absolutely critical. If you are going to do it, there's still huge value in outsourcing because of production items, but yes, to your point, it's usually not the highest quality you could get at the same price if you walked into a Best Buy and did it yourself, correct?
Well, thank you so much for the great comments and questions, David. And thank you, Gary. We're going to get to, by the way, we had somebody else who chimed in on our Google Plus question. Some good people over at Yoakum Ford. They said, we started taking our own new car inventory pictures. Now that's interesting, Gary. Aren't those new car inventory pictures kind of supplied to you by the OEM? Would you recommend that?
Well, the OEM provided ones typically are their hero or advertising ones, and they're not product specific. Consumers, and quick rabbit hole, I used to work at 2 of the vendors of stock photography, Evox and Edmunds, in the past, and there was a point where that was viable, but today's consumer wants to see that exact car in that exact color with that exact equipment. When they look at it, the stock photographs, especially when they're one color, one angle, they do not work at all for today's consumer. So no, he's right. Shoot it in-house. You do need to shoot less photography than your used cars, but absolutely shoot every car and get at least 7 to 12 shots of your new cars.
Geez Louise. Well, thank you, Joachim Ford, for the shout out on Google+. I also wanted to let you know, Dave wrote in that he agrees with you. You've got to take your own new car photos of every vehicle, period. And David must be very, very busy because he says that they do everything in-house. They even do website creation in-house. I don't know how you guys have the time. When do you guys sell cars? I mean, seriously though, Gary, if you take everything in-house, how do you have time to sell any cars? These poor people, they have to do everything. They have to wear like 27 different hats. Oh, he says there's other people for that. Oh, good to know.
Well, there's large staff. Yep, there's large staff.
Okay, last comment before we cut this off, because we are at the very top of the hour. Chris, hey Chris, how you doing? Nice to see you on the show again. He writes in, can I get this slide deck to leverage a raise at my dealership, please? Chris, of course you can, my love. If you need it, I'm there for you. So Gary, thank you so much for a very, very insightful presentation today. It told me a lot more information than I ever thought I was going to learn on this subject, so thank you so much. Gary, you there?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be back. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, and of course,
Can you hear?
yes. Now that we're at the top of the hour, any questions that weren't answered during the time allotted, they're going to be answered by email later today. I also want to remind the audience that a link to download a copy of this webinar recording is going to be emailed to you later today for your reference. Hey, feel free to share it with friends and colleagues. We love that. And today's webinar is also going to be posted online within 24 hours. So just go to dealeron.com/webinars and click on the link on the right-hand side for on-demand webinars. And from there, you can access any of our past webinars. You can also view and register for any of our upcoming webinars, too. Also, at the conclusion of this webinar, in just a moment, you're going to receive a short survey. So please fill it out. We're always looking for great feedback from our audience. And let Gary know what he did today and how he did. Today we're going to randomly select a couple of people from all the completed surveys to also win some Google prizes. Hey, and I also want to let you know Dealeron's going to be at the upcoming AutoCon convention September 4th, 5th, and 6th at the Aria Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. We're going to be at booth 304. If you're going to be there, you had better stop by my booth and say hi to me. I'm going to be there. It's my first AutoCon. I'm pretty excited about it. And if you need more information about AutoCon, all you have to do is go to autocon2013.com. And hey, while you're there, you got to check out the speaking session with the CEO of Dealeron, Ali Amirazvani. He's going to be talking about advanced SEO. And let me tell you, awesome. Just simply awesome. You're going to take pages of notes if you go there. It's a fantastic presentation. And invitations are going to be going out tomorrow for our next webinar. And it's a doozy. How to build your brand, dominate your competition, and make millions with none other than Tracy Myers, arguably one of the auto industry's foremost thought leaders. I've been hunting this guy down, and I finally got a hold of him. And he's going to put on a powerful and exciting presentation based on the best-selling book, You Are the Brand, Stupid. And Tracy's going to provide you with an insider's playbook for gaining priceless publicity and increased sales, all by leveraging your greatest resource, you. During this easy-to-follow one-hour webinar, you're going to learn how you can establish yourself as a respected industry expert in your market. By the way, I have never had a presenter give away so many prizes ever. But Tracy Myers, he's bringing the heat. He has so many prizes and surprises in store for you. It's going to make your head spin. So you got to show up for the live broadcast to win like 5 free things. Whether you own your own dealership or you work for someone else, this invaluable session can take your career and business to the next level. So if you're ready to stop wasting time and start making some serious money, then this is a webinar you can't afford to miss. It's going to be another fabulous presentation by your friends at Dealeron. So don't forget, Dealeron's weekly webinars are held every Thursday, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We have some awesome webinar subjects planned for the rest of this year, but if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions regarding these webinars and our topics, hey, feel free to contact me directly. My name is Eliana Raggio. You can email me at eliana@dealeron.com. I love hearing from you. You can track me down online. I'm on all the social media networks. Thank you all so very much for spending this time with us today, and I hope to see you all on a future webinar in our continuing education series. Have yourselves a good one.